For the sake of completion, I would like to talk about our bomb and our rocks here. I may have the opportunity to provide further data on some of the more important issues here, like how networking works under the hood in Godot. And I'll be honest, there are still elements in bomb and rock which I am not entirely comfortable with. But I do want completion here. So starting with bomb. Bomb is an area 2D, technically. That's much like a physics body, but technically it's sort of ethereal in a sense. You can walk right through it, it will detect when you enter or exit. And beneath it, as children, we have one sprite, which should ultimately be of the bomb, a couple of collision shapes, two particle effects for the explosion, one in each axis, and an animation player. The animation is a little more complicated than usual. You'll note that it triggers both of our particles to be emitting, calls the explode function in bomb as of a certain point, and self-modulates a sprite for some time. Let's look at our functions. Of course, the script is tied to bomb, and we should also note that on bomb body entered and exited are both tied to functions in here. We have two fields here. In area, which is an array which keeps track of everything that's in the area of the bomb blast, and from player, which is the peer ID of the player that put the bomb down. This is important so we can recognize whose score needs to be incremented. Now, explode, you'll remember, is being called by the animation. You might be familiar with this if you're coming from Unity, too, which is right here. There are a lot of different types of track you can add to a animation. One of them is call method, which allows for this at a certain frame. First thing it does is check to see if you happen to be the multiplayer authority for the bomb, which I believe is always the server. In any case, this only needs to be done. And for each element in the area, it checks to see if it's a rock, my new player, or the old player. I'm intending to remove the old player eventually. The next thing we do is we ensure that this thing is not being protected by hiding behind a wall, as an example, by using a 2D raycast. They seem a little complicated at first in Godot, but it's not terrible. The first thing you need is the direct space state, 2D or 3D. With that, that's get world 2D or get world 3D.direct space state. And then the query is a physics ray query parameter, also available in 2D and 3D. You would create it with two fields in the create function. Position is where it starts, p.position is where it ends. It's like a ray from the first thing to the second thing. Lastly, we want to ensure that we can be hit by a bomb even if we happen to be standing on it when it goes off. So we set hit from inside to true on the query. Result is a dictionary here. We use world state, which is what you got up here, dot intersect ray with the query to get the result of all possible impacts along that. One of the fields is going to be collider. If it happens to be the tile map, then we just hit a wall and we know we've been blocked. However, we need exploded to be called on all connected peers, not just locally. So We call its exploded.rpc with the player that had dropped the bomb. This is one of the interesting parts that bugs me as somebody who comes from statically typed languages. Technically, exploded is always called with the ID of the player that dropped the bomb. However, exploded, you might remember, is also a field for the player, and it doesn't really care who dropped the bomb. It could have been your own. You don't get a point for that. So this is why we require that there. Now, done is what happens when we get to the very end of our animation. If we happen to be the authority for the bomb, we free it up. That's what cue free is. Technically, it doesn't mean immediately, but it's very close to immediate, and by queuing it, rather than just calling it free, you do wonders for your performance. So let's look at rock. Rock is much simpler than bomb. It has a sprite, a collision shape, and one animation player, which doesn't really do anything other than make it invisible and then call cue free after a second. If you're wondering why an inert rock might need an animation player. But this is a decent way of scheduling this stuff. It's not the only way, but it's a decent one. So class name rock extends character body 2D, of course, which is like a kinematic body, so you know. And there's an RPC, again, any peer and call local. Exploded by who. Now this is where by who comes in. Your score increases its score for the character identified by who. Then we play explode from the animation player, which is what's right down here. Sets it to invisible, and a second later, cues it to be freed up. Should work just fine.